Hi there, I'm Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, go through the Ridgar folk here in East Texas. I'd like to welcome you to the Raven's Call. You guys have been around a bit, know that this is a heathenry show where I ramble on about different stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, I know I'm going to take care of some housekeeping stuff. If you guys like the videos, if you enjoy what you see, please hit like down below, subscribe, ding the bell so you stay up to date. There's all sorts of contact information down below in the description, everything from Twitter to my Saraha to my email, things like that. I am trying to catch up on emails, guys. Like I've told you guys before, Yuletide is a terribly busy time for me in my industry that I work in, so it's kind of ridiculous. But I'm coming out the other side of that now. This should be the first or second video of the new year. And so I'm getting into an area where it should start to slow down a little bit, and it should be easier for me to reply to those emails and to those messages. So please keep sending them in, and I will do my level best to get back to you just as soon as I can. And thank you guys for understanding. I get some great feedback from y'all. I really, really appreciate it. It means the world to me. So I want to keep that back and forth going. I get great ideas from you guys, and it helps me to flesh out some other ideas. And so anyway, please keep the feedback coming, interact, join the Facebook group, Word-Weaver Productions. That's how I keep my people up to date, and I put a lot of my links and stuff out. So check me out there, join in the conversation. It's a good place. I like that, and we got some good people in there. So all in all, choice. Now we're going to move on to the subject of the day. This is something you guys have been waiting for, okay? At least some of the people that have commented, emailed, messaged, all of that. This is my mock rune casting, okay? Now, I've said this before in previous videos, in comments and things like that. I do not do spreads. I do not do set layouts for my runes, which you're going to see in the video following. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to end up filming it yet, but it's going to be kind of an on-site thing because I have to spread out and have room to throw the runes, and hopefully everything remains in shot for you guys, and you guys can be able to tell what's going on. It's going to take some playing around and making sure that I get everything to fit right. So, but as you will see with the video, I do freeform castings, and the reason that I do them that way is because to me the runes are a very organic sort of divination tool. When you're using the runes, it springs up from the well. It is the roots and the bubbling up from the well. It is not hard codification. It is organic. It is wild. And I tap into that wild part of myself. If you've watched The Beast Within, you'll kind of get an idea what I'm going with there. I tap into a bit of the wild. I tap into a bit of my other, different aspects of my soul to get my insights from the runes. And it just sort of happens organically. So what you're going to see is a rough mock-up of the process I would go through, and I'll try and talk my way through it. And I'll show you kind of how I look for patterns. We'll interpret kind of roughly how the spread would go if it was, an actual casting. But the part of the reason I don't use set spreads, layouts, is because the use of layouts and spreads for runes seems to have come largely from the use of tarot, which, if you were going to put an elemental tie to the different divination tools, tarot is very much an air style of divination. So it's very codified, logistic, sequential. Everything has a specific meaning, a specific place. The specific places and meanings have specific relationships, etc., etc., etc. It's very, very codified. Runes, I see, is very earthy. Very much plant the seed and see what grows. And if anybody has planted anything, you can kind of guide a sapling or a growth, but you can't completely control it. So that's kind of the essence with runes for me, is that I go out and I read the runes as they appear, as the wild lands them, as they flow with weird. That's what I look for. And I let my insight do the work. I let my gut tell me what these runes mean. So there's nothing wrong with using spreads. There's nothing wrong with doing specific pulls and specific layouts and things like that. If you're going to do it with the runes, that's fine, because in essence, any divination tool is simply that. It is a tool that you utilize to harness your own insights towards a specific goal. So you are literally harnessing your own insight, and whatever tool works for you, whether it be dowsing or scrying, and within scrying there's fire watching, there's black mirrors, there's pools, reflective pools, things like that. There's tons of different options. There's tarot, there's oracle decks, there's runes, various sundry forms of runes. There's there's the Ogam, which come from more of a Celtic background, Druidic side of things. There's so many different things that you can get into for divinatory purposes that it all depends on what speaks to you and helps to kind of tap that third eye, for a lack of a better term. I don't go down with the whole third eye imagery and everything like that. It's not exactly how I see things. But as far as tapping into that aspect of ourselves, that insight element, lighting that Kenaz rune, the lamp of inspiration and insight, the tool itself doesn't matter nearly as much as the practitioner does. So that's that. If you're comfortable with yourself and you're comfortable with the system that you're using, you can use anything. You really can. That's pendulum work is literally a weight on a swing, and you swing it in a circle and then it lands on specific indicators. You are honestly just giving your insight and subconscious physical manifestation and expression. That's it. So it doesn't matter what system you use. So again, for this particular video, you're going to see me do a casting. I do use all of the runes every time I cast. And I'm not using a specific question. I am not using a specific problem, anything like that. So please do not overread this rune spread, okay? I don't want people coming back in the messages being like, oh man, you need to watch out for this. I know how to do my runes, all right? I know how to do my own readings. This is not an actual reading, all right? I'm not tapping into anything here. This is literally, this would be like you dropped your tarot deck on the table and then suddenly went, oh, that's a spread. No, it's not a spread. You've not activated anything. You've not done anything. It just happened to fall that way. That's just what this is going to be. It's a mock-up, seriously. So that disclaimer ahead, please don't be messaging me with dire warnings because of what you've seen in this rune spread or what inspirations or insights you've had from it. That's not what this is about, okay? This is a mock-up on technique and specific procedures that I utilize, okay? So, disclaimer out of the way, I will use, as far as my setup goes, typically when I do a rune reading for somebody, what I will do is I will go out and I will spend some me time. First thing I do is whoever I'm going to do the rune reading for, I sit and speak with them for a while and get kind of a grasp on some context. Nothing too minute as far as the detail goes because that's not my thing. That's theirs. So it'll make sense when I kind of go through it. But anyway, I will sit and talk with them to get some context, some generalities of where we're going, kind of what we're looking for, and kind of some overarching stuff on the situation maybe. Largely because most of that comes out actually in the reading. So I'll do that, and then a lot of times I'll do some Galdr beforehand where I will sit and chant specific runes to kind of heighten that insight, and it depends specifically on the situation and which ones speak to me as far as which runes I will chant in preparation for that. Frequently I will chant for Odin in order to gain his insights, since Odin himself is the one that is said to have taken up the runes. And so I'll do a little meditationary pre-work and set things up, set the stage. It can be very, very effective. Now the chanting itself specifically, whether or not you put any credence in the effectiveness of chanting as far as a magical practice, aside from that, chanting, drumming, or rhythmic anything is utilized to help alter the state of consciousness. And it puts you in that brain space necessary to tap into your own insights. It helps to kind of prime the pump, to grease the wheel, as it were. If you get the engine running for a little bit before you sit down and do the runes, then it's just going to run smoother as you go along. And that's the entire idea that I utilize for the chanting. There's some magical aspects as to why I choose what I choose, etc., etc. But in essence, what I'm really trying to do here is use the vibrations to kind of alter my state of consciousness, to get to that divinatory place that I need to be in order to do an effective reading. No, I cannot tell you exactly what that feels like, because it's going to feel a little different for everybody. One of my previous videos, was describing how you could tell that your sacrifice has been accepted, and it was like, it'd be like telling someone what the color blue looks like. I can tell you this is the color blue, and I perceive this as blue, but I cannot tell you the minutia of the sensations that I experience, and I don't know the minutia of the sensations you experience. All we know is that in commonality we call this blue. So that's the thing, is I can tell you this is the altered state of consciousness that I reach when I do rune work, but I can't necessarily fully describe it to you, because it's going to be different depending on whose head you're in. So that's kind of the gist. I will do the talkie bit with them. I will do some meditation one-on-one bit for me, and then I will do the chanting setup. One of the coolest rune readings I ever did, I sat down and did some of the chanting to get that altered state of consciousness ahead of time. And as I'm sitting here doing the chanting, the person that I'm doing it with, who was also an established heathen, has been with it for a while, he started to chant along with me. And so he was doing an undertone support chant while I'm sitting here doing the main chant, and it was very, very cool. We got this resonance thing going, and the vibrations really built up, and then together we had one of the best readings that I've ever done, and I loved it. It was fantastic. So just kind of a food for thought kind of thing. While the chanting and everything works very well for altering your own state of consciousness, it's also helpful to alter the state of consciousness for the person who is you are reading at the same time, because they're there with you. Because this is the gist. When I do a reading, it's a give and take. Okay, and I'll try to talk you through some more when we do the actual spread here in just a minute. The process is I will take out a few runes. I'll talk to them a little bit. I'll set the stage. This is what we're going to do. We're going to touch weird. We're going to cast the lots in the river, and we're going to see which way the river is flowing, to see where this river might lead, and to see if this is a river that you need to prepare yourself for, or if we need to change course. And that's the best metaphor I can give for it. So I'll describe this as to what we're doing. We are reading weird. We're taking the measure of weird's direction. We're literally seeing which way the stream is flowing, and we're going to decide whether or not that's where we want to go or not, and then what we can do in accordance with that information. It is not, when you do a reading, it is not a hard and set future. This is not how things will be. This is a possibility. You are in the now, in Vertandi, fed by Ord Brunner, Ord's well, and you are reaching towards school, should be. And so school is immaterial. Her world is vaporous, and so you can't lock on to any one specific thing. It's very Schrodinger quantum physics-esque. So you can pick a probable destination, but not the definitive destination. And even then, it's a logical outcome of events as fed through the vector that we are on now, and that vector can be changed dependent on what we do in the here and now. So anyway, the reading itself will be a go back and forth. I describe to them what I'm doing, and then we'll start by grabbing a few lots, throwing them out, and then we'll talk back and forth. We'll start to tell a tale. I'll start to look at the runes, interpret the runes as they fall, and then I will look at where those runes fall in relation to one another, whether or not patterns form with the lots themselves, if it forms a tree or a spiral, as far as where the rune lots begin to fall. And we'll begin to interpret those things, and we'll build a story together over time. And every time I throw another handful out, the story develops and changes a little bit more, until in the end we have a coherent timeline and chain of events. And the key there is the we, because I will talk about overarching elements, aspects, what these things could represent, and then I will work with them who are in that situation, dealing with those contexts, and ask them specifically, we'll go back and forth and we'll plug in people, we'll plug in events that fit these patterns, and then we will examine those patterns and those events and those people from that frame of view. So we'll work together to better understand what it is that they are dealing with in the long run. So anyway, without any further ado, we've gone on for about 15 minutes or so on the prep work and everything for it. Let's go ahead. We're going to cut over to hopefully the yard. I don't know. It depends on exactly where I film this. We're going to cut over. We're going to take a look at this rune spread, this casting that I do, and we'll pick it up from there. So here's hoping for a smooth transition. All right. All right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the mock rune reading now. I know the frame is a bit odd, but having to work with what I can. Let me give kind of an example of what I'm doing here. Usually I put down a base blanket or something that I can work on top of. In this case, I do have a picnic blanket down here underneath, and then I've got a kind of blanket on top of. The only picnic blanket I had available at the time is this weird psychedelic yellow and purple thing. So if you see it in the side of the shot, do forgive. It's just what I had to work with. I'm trying to beat the rain, and I like to do these outside. So I'm also kind of working with a weird setup. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got. One of these days, I'm actually going to get me some decent equipment, I think. We'll see how this holds out. All right, so when I do a rune reading, I like to sit on this side, and I like to have the person that I'm going to be doing the reading for sit on the other side. And we work back and forth across the reading to kind of discuss what we've got. And I've already done the introduction, so you've heard kind of how I go about my prep work. I'm not going to go through and do all of that in the setup right now, largely because we've already done it. Second of all, there's some minor tricks of the trade that are mine and mine alone that I'm not going to share out on the video, but I will give you the basics on what I mean by doing a casting. Now, do forgive the birds and stuff in the background. I know they can be kind of loud, but I live in the country. That's how it is. Now, as I've said before, I'll do my chant, I'll do my talk with the person, and then we'll get prepped, we'll get kneeled down on either side of the blanket, and then I will begin to actually do the casting. All right? Now, I keep my runes over here. I'm right-handed, so I like to reach with my right hand. And every time I reach in, hopefully that's still in frame. I'll move it over a bit so you can kind of see, hopefully, a little bit forward. But I will grab a fistful of runes. I never count them. I never look at them. I grab and I cast, literally. Now, once I've cast, and I'll give you guys a close-up view on the actual spread here in just a little bit. But once I've cast, I lay the runes out where they fall. I don't move them. I may reorient them so I can look at what I'm looking at. I go back and forth sometimes about whether or not I use Merkstav runes or reversed runes in a reading. Some runes cannot be Merkstav because they're symmetrical, like Isa. It doesn't matter if it's right side up or upside down. There is no Merkstav to that. So, but things like the ones we have out here, Vonyo, Hagalas, Isa, and Kenas. And I don't frequently use Merkstav unless my gut tells me in the moment that's there for a reason, and then I need to pay attention to it. So, most of the time what I will do with this is I will take this spread, the first runes that I've thrown out, and we'll explore. Like here, Kenas is the base root of the growth here that we have. We have 3 branching paths. So Kenas, which is some kind of insight, some kind of wisdom, some kind of light of learning, some kind of insightful incident in this that can lead to 3 different branches is what I'm seeing. One is happiness. One is in that Vonyo, the balance of happiness. Hagaraz represents to me in this a damaging path, a path that is ill-advised, a warning, as it were. And Isa over here on the side indicates to me a path of stagnation. So from this, I see a branching from a route of 3 different sources, 3 different routes that we could go. At this point in time, I would talk to the person about what they have going on in their life, what these different paths could represent. Again, it's a very case-by-case basis. We would do a lot of back and forth and discussion to see how it goes, what we get from it. And then I would grab another handful of runes and cast them out. Literally, I'm just casting. I'm throwing to see where they land. Hopefully, they all stay in frame. Now, I've got Lagus, Petro, Manas, and Thurizas. Lagus for fluidity, Petro for the unknown, Manas, and Thurizas. At this point in time, the pathway is shifting. I don't see much over here on the Vunyo side of things, but I'm looking over here at Isa and Hagalas, right? And from insight through these branches, we have to pass through Vunyo, Hagalas, and Isa to get to these runes on the other side. This path seems easy. This path seems like there's some unknown and that there's some defensiveness at the other side with Thurizas. The Isa path requires fluidity to pass through, a breaking up of this ice into a fluid form. And so from here, we're pushing into that direction. And we discuss a little bit of the details there. It's kind of difficult to give you guys a good view of a rune casting without having an actual question. Again, there is no question at play here. This is not an actual rune reading. This is just me showing you guys what I've got. Okay? Now, hopefully, these are staying in frame. Over here, I have Berkana, Sowilo, Tivas, Algis. Okay? Now, the Elk rune, of course, is very defensive. It's kind of a passive defense. Thurizas, directed force, justice. Berkana over here, new growth, the mother rune. Sowilo as an outcast. So, it's interesting. We're going to cast a bit more to get a better idea of what's going on here. Not that this actually means anything, so it's going to be particularly difficult to read. Now, I know I'm getting some of these out of frame by the way they're laying out. But I will grab the camera here at the end and give you a top-down view of the rune casting. But if you see over here through the Isa branch, we've got a clustering here. We would talk about that clustering. This is Ingus, Lagos, and Gabel. Ingus, which is that growing eruptive force. Lagos, fluidity. And Gabo, sacrifice or gift. This branch has grown specifically kind of off to the side, a new growth, a new shoot, another option that was unseen in the previous exploration of the problem. And this is Berkana through Ansur, Sowilo, and Dagas. The new day, new dawn. So we have a growth of a path through communication, a success that leads to a new normal, a new beginning, a new dawning, as it were. Dawning of a new age. Whereas through this path, through the Isa path, where we saw Lagos, the need to become fluid, there is Ingus and Gabo. I think that one's not done yet. Hagalas leads through the algaes over here, which is damage to defense. Manas being our man rune, fellowship rune. So there's some interaction between peoples there. Over here we have Evas, which is a rune of dedication, the horse rune. All right. Now, I don't know. I'm going to pull this in a bit because it's in line, but I know that's out of frame over there. Yeah. Cool. Now these. Raido. So this branch over here has grown a Raido. I don't know if you can see it. Again, I'll do an aerial view here in a moment. Trying to keep things kind of in view here. Rairo over here indicates transitions, movement, journey, and that's in along with this path towards Dagas. Over here, this path is kind of developing more, these two. Vunyo, the happiness route, Hagalas, the damaging route, very, very close to each other, very parallel. Over here I see Otala. Now this one did fall Merc stuff, and I'm going to leave that one there for a reason, because I think that in this particular instance, there's probably a reason for that. Otala as a rune represents the immaterial wealth, usually family. An inverted like this indicates to me, in the fullness of this, that happiness and destruction are probably going hand in hand. What I originally saw as 3 courses, I don't think was 3 courses after all. I think this course here is intertied to each other, and that as we come through here, directed force, and I'm going to say that that's probably the loss of a family member. It's going to leave a person guarded, unsure of the future, but through support of family, defense of what's important, things come full circle. There's a lot of things going on here at the same time. So, we're going to cast out the last runes, and then I'm going to switch views here in a second and give you guys the aerial, and we'll go from there, okay? So here's the last cast. Feu. Over in that alley. This goes way up at the top. Ivar's Life and Death. Uruz there. Alright. So, I am going to switch views here, because at this point that was just to kind of show you the process that I go through. And we're going to go to a bit of shaky cam here in just a second to illustrate to you what it is I do. Alright, so hang on. Alright guys, we are back. Now, before we did kind of just the outward rune casting bit, to show you kind of the mechanics of how I do it. Sorry, my cable's in the line there. So now I'm kind of giving you an overview of the rune reading itself. You saw me move this Rairo rune back in line with Dagas and Sowilo before. I have gone back to having it over here because there's something that I wanted to show you guys, okay? Now, I talked before about runes and their progression and the shapes that they can take, that I don't just look for the runes themselves, but sometimes the shape that the runes take when they fall. Sometimes they can cause a rune in of itself, like this Rune Shape. Moving that Rairo in took that away. I put it back to where it was to keep it kind of, because I was questionable about frame, but I put it back where it was to show you guys kind of how that can occur. And you saw this shape is very, very organic. This is just kind of where the lots fell. It was by luck. I don't look at the lots when I throw them out there. I don't control consciously where I throw them at. Obviously, I'm always in control of where I throw them, but I let my subconscious kind of handle where they land. And I just put them out there. This is the example of Ultima Merc stuff that I was talking about before. I know my runes can be kind of hard to see in this lighting, but that's my Ultima. It's Merc stuff, which is why I think it plays into this particular thing here. Kanaz, Revelation, through this path of Vunyo and Hagalas, joy and pain, and then directed force, and it seems like a loss of a family member in some way. Perthronalgies, of course, is an unknown. Defensiveness. So coming through this progression, learning of something, experiencing both joy and pain through it, maybe losing something important to you, someone important to you, but driving on with a purpose through uncertainty, but remaining strong and protected, up into this clustering here, which I don't know if you can tell is the Uruz and Manas, support and strength from family, through Thurizaz, which is a defensive rune, again, protective, leading up to Yera and Ivaz and Evaz, dedication to see things through, life or death, cyclic returns. So the world keeps on turning. So you can see through here the Isa, up into this cluster here, which is Lagos, Gebo, and Ingvaz, up through Feu and Nautis. This is a parallel path. At first I thought maybe it might be another possibility in a path, And it kind of sort of takes on a Thuriza's shape in and of itself. That's interesting. I hadn't seen that before. Interesting. This particular path, I think, in this reading would represent a parallel path, something that's also going along with this here. This, I think, is the crux of the main conscious flow of what's going on. This is a parallel path, something that's born from stagnation and passes through this almost disruptive force where that ice is liquefied. There is a sacrifice of some kind. There's a growing force building up eruptive. There's a cost of some kind, or gain, financial, that is born of need. So, or a need born of finance, I think is the way that would progress. So, in and amidst all of this, the dam is going to break on something that's been holding back. And I think much needed finances are going to come in there. Either that or the flip could be that because something here has been holding back, there's a breakthrough sacrifice, that there's going to be a tremendous cost, and that they're going to be in need of money. The latter of those is probably the more likely given this particular layout, especially the defensive rune, Thorn, Thorizaz, indicating some kind of pricking, some kind of need for defense. So that I would actually take as a warning, indicating some kind of thing probably in the business world taking place alongside the loss of family and this disruption here that leads to life just kind of keeps going. But in the meantime, there is some financial hardship, I think, coming from this side of things. But what really gets me is that we had this growth over here, this Rune-shaped Berkana through Ansur, through Soelo, with a side Jantaraido all the way up to Dagaz. This, in spite of all of this, where life is still going, where there's some financial hardship, even in spite of all of that, over on the side here, we have new growth, new beginning. Something new is coming up. And it's born from this new growth. It is given voice. There's some kind of communication which indicates to me that it's probably either going to be something related to spoken or written word, or it could be that communication through this new growth, new communications, could be a new relationship. Communication through success, creating a new normal after a side transition here, all in all leading to Vunyo, which is a joy and balance kind of thing. It's very interesting. This is the kind of thing where, and the accuracy of a read like this would require me to be able to actually speak to the person that I'm doing the reading for, and be able to get their full insight on what it is that's going on, because they could help me with this. They could tell me if there's been a new beginning, if there's someone involved in that. And I could tell them, well, okay, with this new beginning, this new person that's entered your life, on the side of all of this crap that you're going through, which just looks like mundane day-to-day stuff for the most part, you're looking over here at, despite financial hardships, maybe some loss, or that's not even necessarily a loss, that could be an upset in the family. It could be discord in the family. Again, it would depend case-by-case basis on who you're dealing with. Coming from the Hagalas, up there, that's the closest tie there to the Othala, and directed force justice. I'm going to go with there's probably some kind of dispute, disagreement in the family, causing some uncertainty and a little defensiveness of self, and then we move on through this. So, but, over here, they could tell me, oh yes, there's a new person, and in spite of all of this, I could tell them, if you improve your communication with this individual, talk to this person, then you will have success in that relationship, and after a little side journey with them, a little detour away from all of this, because you notice that's an outlier, away from all of this, that is something completely else. It is way over here in an outlier, and I pay attention to outliers, because outliers mean something. We have Daga, it's kind of a new normal, a new dawning, a new beginning. So, despite all of this crap, something good can come up on the side. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something monumental. Dagas being the day after day after day, can have a sense of mundanity, a sense of repetitiveness to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's normalcy after an extent. So in an instance like this, you could have a new normal establishing despite all of this chaos that's in the background over here. And there's a lot of chaos there. There's financial instability, born of need, or leading to a need. And then over here, a lot of things in this particular layout just indicate ducking one's head, staying through, and the cyclic return up there coupled with Evaz and with Ivaz. I mean, that's very much a persevere to maintain, to keep going, and just kind of muddle through things, especially with this kind of progression that we've had down here. And it's all born from some kind of revelation, some kind of insight. So you would learn something that would probably be a mixed bag, good news, bad news scenario, judging by that little cluster right there with Vonyo and Hagelas, causing some discord in the family. Probably some strong disagreements in which this person who is doing that I'm doing the reading for is probably reading right in, judging by the Tivaz rune there. Progressing through the unknown and some defensiveness all the way up to kind of a new norm thing. But even then, in this new norm muddle through, kind of just see yourself through, there's the support of those around them. I would say Urus and Manas, that is definitely getting strength from social structure, from those around them. Could be family, could be friends, there's no telling. But nonetheless, there's still a guardedness over there with Thorizaz. They need to protect themselves. So whatever's going on in all of this, they still need to protect themselves, even though they need to draw strength from their friends and family and just muddle through. I would say that it's still a favorable read, that there's some decisions that need to be made and how this person would handle this particular scenario. They need to be prepared for the financial need that's going to arise in the middle of all this. It doesn't go all the way to the top, which indicates to me that it's probably a short-term thing, a temporary need that can be overcome. So, there's that. There's probably going to be a little flash of chaos in there. That is, and honestly, it could be something as simple as broken washing machine, some kind of issue there in the house, especially with Lagos, the lake, the fluidity. Sacrifice would be the expense paid. Yeah, it could be as literal as that. It could be figurative of, a lost job, things like that. But I do think because of the literal shortness of it in relation to the length of the read on either side, that it's a short-lived thing. This parallels it almost identically in length, but the dagas there indicates to me that it's an ongoing thing. This is short simply because it's a new beginning. This is short, I think, because it is short. Because the difference here is that this goes all the way back down to the root, whereas the Isanid branches off somewhere around the same time as the good news, bad news scenario. And hell, honestly, it could be just a spin-off of the bad news aspect. Kind of a tangential, oh yeah, by the way, in addition to all of this bad news that you got, there's also this side effect of financial hardship that comes along with all the emotional stuff that comes along with it. So anyway, just so you guys can see, this is my rune reading. I'm going to stand up here, keep my cable out of it, give you guys one last aerial view. Now, as I promised, this was a mock casting. Keep in mind, this is not a real reading. It doesn't actually mean anything. All I'm doing is interpreting patterns and showing you how you could go about doing this. This rune reading itself could fall exactly like this, but mean something completely different depending on the individual that I'm reading it for. We tell a story together. It's a give and take. That's why I throw the runes out, not all at once, but in phases, because it allows me to analyze things as they grow in process. I talk to the individual with every step that we throw out there. We begin to build the narrative. We tell the story back and forth. They help me with the details. I help them by recognizing the flow of weird. And that's what we're seeing here, okay? What we're seeing are paths of weird. If you think about it as a tree, these are different branches within the tree around the central trunk. If you think about it as a river flow, these are the different currents. In some readings, this would be 3 completely separate paths that you could choose from with 3 separate outcomes. If these had gone all the way to the end over here on this side, I think I would have gone that route with the interpretation. But in the fact that this one is so short, and this one branches off so oddly on its own over here, I do not think they're separate branches, but rather parallel paths that are ongoing with this main elongated branch issue over here. Okay, sorry about the focus. I'm sitting here trying to gesture and not kill the focus too badly. So overall design layout is important. Looking for symbols within the symbols, such as Thorizaz, Vunyo. There's arguably a Tivaz there. It's a bit of a stretch, though, because all of this gobbledygook back here as far as shape goes. This is more organic, like tree-like growth with a cap at the top. I would try to interpret that kind of capping, but in essence, all of this is building towards this, so that could be just a branch out kind of thing. So overall, designs are important. The narrative, the back and forth is important. I do it in phases for a reason, 3 or 4 runes at a time. Build the story, build the development, and then we sit for a while afterwards with the runes just like this, and we debate the story. We go back and I look at it, and I take all of those things, and I admit some of the interpretations early on may have been wrong, but we talk about that. And we talk about why it may have looked like that to begin with, but that these new revelations that came out during the reading gave more insight into those early developments, and suddenly we know more than we did before. Suddenly it makes more sense. And that's the way things go in real life, too. So that is kind of how these rune readings work. Sorry about the shaky cam. I'm sitting here trying to... been kneeling for a while, too, so... a little shaky in the legs. Here we go. Overall design is important. Overall story is important. And a lot of it is trusting your gut. As you can see, like I said before, this is an organic process. The shape is organic. I've explained why I throw the runes the way I do. You notice that there's not a set pattern to this. It's like I said, it's organic. This is why I don't do spreads. I do castings. Because the shape that it takes can be just as important as which runes come out. The flow here, all of the context as far as this goes, is given by where these runes fall in relation to each other. You know, the parallel path aspect, the side jaunt, all of this. None of this insight would have come from a simple, straight up, you know, designed spread. You know, if we were to say, all right, 1, 2, 3 runes, you know, this is the root and this is the cause, and then there's these side factors with an overarching, and then there's the tarot inside, do the Celtic cross spread from tarot. You would not get all of the complexity of this particular insight. The runes are very much about trusting your gut and looking for patterns, and then using those patterns to harness your own insight to read the flow of weird and tell what could be going on. Okay? So, that is the mock rune reading. We can talk more about this in detail later on, some tips and tricks and how to do some of the different some different spreads, what some different relationships could mean. Could have some fun stuff with that where I give you guys some examples. I don't know. I'm going to play with it. I'm going to try and get kind of creative with some content this year. We'll see where it goes. So, I know you guys are going to have some questions. That's fine. I don't mind. Hit me up in the comments. Hit me up on email. I know this is not how everybody does rune castings, okay? And please, 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 let me put this disclaimer out there. This is not a real rune casting, so please do not try to reflect this particular casting back on myself. And try to give me some kind of warnings about things you see in the casting. That's not what this is. This is literally just random runes on a sheet. And I've taken some precautions to make sure that it's not an actual reading, that it is indeed just randomness. And so that's kind of how that particular process goes. So that's the spread. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hail, may your ancestors smile on you.